Everyone says buying in bulk always saves money, and that idea sounds comforting. The truth is messier and often quietly expensive when you look beyond the sticker price. Right now, we are going to peel back the myth and show you how apparent savings transform into real costs. This video is about more than groceries and warehouse clubs. Because the decision to buy large amounts is a decision about time, space, and human behavior. By the end, you will know when bulk buying truly saves money and when it quietly destroys value. The core assumption behind bulk buying is simple and seductive. Unit price falls as quantity increases. That arithmetic can be true in a vacuum, but households do not exist in a vacuum because spoilage, space, and changing needs complicate the math. We will walk through these complications step by step and reveal where the numbers flip. Understanding the real cost of bulk buying requires translating groceries into time and space, which often reveals hidden expenses that receipts never show. These hidden costs add up slowly, silently, and sometimes painfully when you throw away what you never used. To understand why bulk buying became popular, we need a short history of the warehouse club, which reshaped retail economics. In the 1970s and 1980s, warehouse clubs turned inventory velocity and membership fees into profit, passing a fraction of the savings to consumers who bought large quantities. That model worked because industrial buyers and large families could absorb big volumes quickly. Warehouse clubs taught consumers to equate size with value, but the historical success of those clubs depended on specific conditions, like stable demand and economies of scale. Those conditions do not always apply to modern households with shifting diets, smaller living spaces, and subscription services. Unit price alone gives a partial view because it ignores other variables that determine value over time. Imagine buying the cheapest unit price on paper and then losing half the goods because you could not use them before they spoiled. That outcome transforms a bargain into a loss, and it happens more often than people admit. Economics teach us to measure total cost, not just sticker price, and total cost includes storage, depreciation, and opportunity costs. We will use that framework to evaluate when bulk purchases make economic sense and when they fail. Spoilage is the most obvious way bulk purchases become wasteful, because perishables decay at predictable rates. Buying 20 pounds of berries for a family of 2 guarantees that some of that fruit will go soft, moldy, or forgotten. Even airtight packaging cannot stop time, and the clock ticks faster than many shoppers realize. Spoilage is not just food rotting in the fridge, it includes quality decline in frozen goods, rancidity in bulk oils, and potency loss in vitamins and supplements. Each form of decay is a tax on your initial savings, and it compounds when you misjudge rates of consumption. Real examples are clearer than abstract warnings, and the kitchen is full of cautionary tales. One common story is the giant loaf of bread that becomes rock-hard crumbs after a week in an apartment with limited freezer space. People buy bulk sizes with good intentions and then discover their reality does not match their plans. These small mismatches, repeated across different staples, add up into hundreds of dollars wasted per year for many households. We will analyze sample shopping mistakes to show how these errors compound and how they look on a monthly budget. Expiration labels and confusing date codes create another layer of risk that turns buying big into a gamble. Some dates are best, by suggestions. Others are sell, by requirements for retailers, and consumers rarely know the difference when they stockpile. That ambiguity can lead to discarding perfectly usable food out of caution, which is unnecessary waste. Retailers and manufacturers use labeling language inconsistently, and that inconsistency imposes a knowledge burden on shoppers who just want to avoid foodborne illness. Learning how to read labels and prioritize items becomes a surprisingly valuable skill if you buy in bulk regularly. Non-food items are not immune to the pitfalls of bulk buying because chemicals, cosmetics, and cleaning supplies degrade over time. Hand soap, cleaning sprays, and sunscreen lose effectiveness when stored improperly or beyond their shelf life. Holding large quantities of these items increases the chance that some of them will sit unused until their value declines. Even packaging can fail, with boxes torn or seals broken, which forces disposal before product expiration. Those physical losses are rarely tallied on price tags, but they are real economic events for anyone managing limited space. Beyond spoilage, storage itself carries a measurable cost that rarely factors into purchasing decisions. Space is a finite resource in apartments, houses, and small businesses, and dedicating shelves to oversized items is a choice with alternatives. Every shelf occupied by a bulk case could have been used for higher value goods or even living space. There are also hidden monetary costs, such as renting storage, buying shelving, or upgrading a freezer for bulk purchases that suddenly require cold storage. When you include these expenses, the apparent per-unit discount can evaporate quickly in small living spaces. Opportunity cost is an invisible but powerful force in the bulk buying equation because money tied up in inventory cannot be used elsewhere. That cash could be earning interest, funding an emergency, or paying down higher interest debt, and those alternatives sometimes beat the marginal savings of a bulk discount. When consumers forget to compare alternatives, they miss the real economic trade-offs. Time itself is an opportunity cost because every minute spent managing large supplies is time not spent on other productive activities. Balancing time, space, and capital is essential if you want to make bulk purchases genuinely profitable instead of merely convenient. Psychology plays a surprisingly large role in why bulk buying can lead to more consumption rather than savings. Larger packages and visible abundance can increase eating and usage rates through the mere presence effect, which nudges people to consume more when more is readily available. That behavioral inflation can erase any cost advantage within weeks. Sunk cost fallacies also trap buyers who have already invested in a large purchase and then feel compelled to use every ounce, sometimes to their detriment. Awareness of these psychological traps is a practical advantage when planning purchases at scale. Households also change, sometimes faster than inventory cycles, which makes bulk buying risky by default. People move, dietary restrictions appear, and life events, such as pregnancy or job changes, alter consumption patterns in unpredictable ways. Buying in large quantities assumes a steady state that rarely matches the volatility of real lives. When the household shrinks or preferences shift, those bulk items become stranded assets that slowly lose value or are discarded entirely. Anticipating change is not a prediction exercise, but a risk management strategy. When deciding whether to buy big, retailers design promotions and loyalty programs to influence bulk buying behavior, and those marketing strategies can mislead consumers about true savings. Bulk discounts are often layered over inflated list prices, membership models, or conditional rebates, which obscure the real deal. Shoppers need to learn to calculate net saving rather than trusting promotional narratives. Sales cycles matter because sometimes a non-bulk purchase during a deep sale costs less than a standard bulk price. Understanding timing, comparison shopping, and historical pricing data can dramatically improve the return on your grocery budget. Membership and travel costs to warehouse stores are another overlooked expense that undermines bulk savings for some shoppers. The annual fee, gas, and time spent traveling to large stores add up, especially if you live far from the warehouse. For low-frequency bulk buyers, those costs can exceed their projected savings over a year. Even the convenience of one-stop shopping has a cost in time and exposure to impulse purchases that dilute the savings from planned bulk buys. Real savings require counting every dollar spent to access the bulk price, not just the discounted price at the shelf. Let us look at a concrete example, so the math becomes unavoidable rather than theoretical. Imagine a single person buying a 20-pound pack of chicken because the unit price is 30% lower than smaller packs. Without a large freezer or a plan for weekly meals, half of that meat can spoil or suffer freezer burn before use. When you factor in the marginal cost of freezer space, the extra electricity, and the time required to portion and freeze the meat correctly, the actual savings can be reduced to a rounding error or turn negative entirely. Real-life numbers often overturn intuitive assumptions when you include these small but important costs. Small businesses offer another genre of bulk buying mistakes that teaches a universal lesson about inventory risk. A cafe might buy coffee beans in bulk to chase a lower price, only to find that roast variations, supplier changes, or demand fluctuations leave them with stale inventory. That business then writes off the loss, and the bulk discount becomes a managerial failure. The lesson for consumers is identical. Bulk purchases increase exposure to forecasting errors. And unless you have repeatable demand, discounts on volume can turn into capital losses. Good inventory management matters as much for kitchen cupboards as it does for retail backrooms. Sometimes the simplest mistakes create the largest losses, like buying seasonal items out of season because of an irresistible bulk discount. Holiday specials and clearance racks tempt buyers into hoarding decorations, canned turkeys, and novelty goods that have narrow windows of utility. When the season passes, those items sit unused, lowering the effective value of the purchase. Seasonality is a predictable risk, and it is exactly the kind of risk bulk buyers overlook because the math looks too attractive on the label. If you cannot realistically use a seasonal bulk item before its relevance expires, skip the bargain. So how should you evaluate a bulk purchase before you reach for that giant pack or pallet? Start by estimating your realistic consumption rate in days and compare it to the product's safe shelf life under typical storage conditions. Include storage costs, the probability of spoilage, and the opportunity cost of money tied up in the inventory. A simple break, even calculation that includes these variables, will reveal whether the bulk price truly saves money over the expected holding period. We will show specific formulas and heuristics you can use in everyday decisions, so you stop guessing and start measuring. There are practical tools and apps that make this evaluation easier, and you do not need to be an accountant to use them. Inventory tracking apps, simple spreadsheets, and price comparison tools help you simulate scenarios and reveal hidden costs. Investing small amounts of time into these tools can prevent much larger monetary waste down the road. Even basic tools such as labeled containers, dated markers, and a rotating inventory list will improve outcomes dramatically for bulk buyers. The point is to convert intuition into repeatable process, because good processes prevent emotional mistakes. Storage techniques also change the equation, because proper preservation extends usable life and makes bulk buying more viable. Freezing in meal-sized portions, vacuum sealing, and using oxygen absorbers for dry goods significantly reduces waste. Those techniques add labor and sometimes equipment cost, but they can convert dubious bulk buys into clear savings. Plan storage before you buy, because retrofitting space and equipment after the purchase often costs more than the incremental saving on the item. Smart storage multiplies the effective shelf life and makes your cupboard into a strategic asset rather than a liability. If bulk buying tempts you, consider alternative strategies that capture the benefits without the downsides. Subscriptions and scheduled deliveries provide volume discounts while matching frequency to consumption, which reduces spoilage risk. Community buying and cooperative purchases share storage and usage responsibility among several households, spreading risk and improving utilization. Another approach is to buy smaller quantities of higher quality items that store or freeze well, instead of cheap bulk goods that degrade quickly. These hybrid strategies preserve the upside of economies of scale, while controlling the primary sources of waste. Now let's define when bulk buying actually makes sense, so you know when to lean in confidently. Items that have long shelf lives, stable demand, and low storage costs are prime candidates for bulk purchases. Products like household paper goods, canned staples, and certain cleaners often fit this profile and can legitimately reduce per unit expenses. The trick is matching the storage capability to the item profile, because a long shelf life is only valuable if you can store the product safely and accessibly. When those conditions align, bulk buying becomes a smart, efficient choice rather than a gamble. Bulk buying also makes sense in contexts where transaction costs are high, like when traveling to remote suppliers or when delivery charges are prohibitively expensive. Buying larger quantities can amortize the per-trip cost across many units, which turns a bulk purchase into a rational choice. In those cases, storage is the price you pay for logistical efficiency. Shared ownership and bulk purchasing for events are additional scenarios where scale creates real value without the usual pitfalls. The calculus changes when you can distribute units across many users who naturally consume the product quickly. Community and cooperative bulk models deserve special attention because they alter the risk profile of buying in bulk. When neighbors split large purchases, the unit economics improve while individual storage and waste risk shrinks. Those community strategies also build resilience by pooling knowledge about preservation and rotation. Cooperative models can be informal grocery swaps or formal buying clubs that negotiate directly with suppliers, and both approaches beat individual hoarding in many scenarios. The social aspect of shared bulk buying introduces accountability that reduces waste and increases rational planning. Sustainability adds another moral frame to the bulk buying decision, because waste is an environmental cost as well as a financial loss. Food waste contributes to methane emissions and resource misallocation, which means a consumer who treats bulk buying irresponsibly externalizes costs onto society and the planet. Those externalities are invisible in price tags, but matter deeply over time. When you include environmental impact in your decision, the math shifts further against careless bulk purchases and in favor of careful planning and modesty. Reducing waste through smarter buying is a direct intersection of budget responsibility and climate stewardship. Behavioral hacks can transform how you manage bulk goods once you buy them, turning potential waste into efficient usage. Label everything with dates. Use first in first, out-rotation to prioritize aging items, and pre-portion goods to match typical consumption servings. These small rituals are the hygiene of good bulk management. Automation helps too, because setting calendar reminders and scheduled inventory checks prevents forgotten items from decaying in the back of a cupboard. Consistent micro actions compound into major annual savings when you practice them over months and years. Building a smart shopping strategy starts with planning and ends with review, and the middle is discipline. Create a shopping list from a known consumption pattern, audit your pantry monthly, and only buy additional quantities when your data supports the decision. This process flips bulk buying from a habit into a tactical choice. Review your decisions quarterly to catch changing preferences and seasonal shifts, and be ruthless about returning or sharing items that no longer fit your plan. The discipline of review turns random bargains into rational savings. Here is a compact decision flow you can memorize and use in every shopping trip to avoid wasting money. First, ask how frequently you will use the product, and then compare that time frame against shelf life under normal storage conditions. Second, factor in storage and opportunity costs. And third, consider whether community purchasing or subscriptions can reduce risk. If your answer favors usage over time and your storage is adequate, buying in bulk probably saves money. Otherwise, purchase smaller quantities or use alternative strategies. This simple flow captures most of the variables that turn bulk bargains into money-saving moves or into expensive mistakes. Technology is changing how we approach bulk buying, and the influence is accelerating quickly with dynamic pricing and delivery algorithms. Online platforms now offer bulk discounts without forcing you to store everything at once by enabling scheduled deliveries that match consumption. AI shopping assistants can suggest optimal order sizes based on past usage and predicted behavior. These tools reduce the cognitive load of inventory management and lower the friction for efficient buying, but they also introduce new subscription costs and data privacy trade-offs. The modernization of bulk purchasing makes the same economic questions easier to answer if you use the technology wisely. To make these ideas practical, here are concrete rules of thumb you can use right now in stores and online. Rule 1. Never buy more than you can reasonably consume before the expected degradation point without a preservation plan. Rule 2. Include the cost of storage and access in your per-unit calculation before deciding. Rule 3. Prioritize bulk purchases for non-perishables and items with stable demand, and consider cooperative buying for large volume goods that you cannot personally use quickly. These rules will steer you away from common pitfalls and towards smarter savings. A surprising conclusion emerges when you add up the arithmetic, psychology, and logistics, buying less. But buying smarter often offers better financial returns than buying more. Conservative purchasing with disciplined rotation, pre-portioning, and scheduled restocking turns small purchases into a strategy of continuous optimization. Ironically, restraint becomes the path to larger net savings over time. This paradox is important because it reframes the cultural instinct to treat abundance as synonymous with thrift and reveals that modesty can be more profitable. The best shoppers are not those who maximize volume, but those who minimize waste and manage time thoughtfully. Before we finish, consider the environmental and social angle as an extension of personal finance, because waste has community costs. When a household avoids wasteful bulk buys, it reduces landfill contributions and the carbon footprint associated with producing and transporting those discarded goods. Personal frugality, in this sense, aligns with civic responsibility. If you scale smarter purchasing habits across communities, the collective reduction in waste would be significant and measurable. Money saved and emissions avoided are two outcomes of a single behavioral shift towards smarter consumption. Let us return to the simple question you asked at the beginning. Does buying in bulk always save money? The answer is no, because the full cost equation includes spoilage, storage, opportunity cost, psychological effects, and changing needs. Those factors often make small disciplined purchases a better financial strategy than unreflective bulk acquisition. Yet bulk buying can and does make sense in many contexts where storage, demand stability, and logistics align to favor scale. The key is to become deliberate about the decision rather than reflexively reaching for the largest pack. If you want quick practical next steps, start with a 30-day audit of your pantry and fridge to quantify actual consumption. Track what you buy, what you throw away, and how long items sit before use, because data drives better decisions. Use those findings to create a shopping manifesto that defines when you will buy in bulk and when you will not. Implement labeling, portioning, and calendar reminders during the next buying cycle, and treat membership fees or delivery charges as part of the unit cost calculation. These steps will convert insight into durable money, saving habits. Finally, here is a philosophical twist to carry beyond groceries into other areas of life. Scale is seductive because it promises efficiency, but scale without fit often becomes waste. Whether you are buying groceries, subscribing to services, or investing in tools, the same principle applies. Match scale to need, not to aspiration. That perspective reorients thrift from a measure of how much you can stockpile to how wisely you steward resources. Smart living is less about abundance and more about intentionality, which turns modest choices into powerful long-term advantages. If this video gave you a new perspective about bulk buying and money, then you are already becoming a smarter shopper. Take one small action this week, such as auditing your pantry or calculating the true per-unit cost with storage included, and see how quickly the results appear. Small experiments create powerful habits and compound into meaningful savings over time. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe, because we will keep exploring how simple ideas change the way you live and spend. Thank you for watching, and go make your next purchase intentional rather than automatic.